For the late arrivers, I'll play some music. She would be a microphone or something. Very long days with the children.
I hope you can get some time tomorrow.
Yeah. Are you ready?
Thank you. Sure, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely.
It's nice to have some. In the face. I don't want in the face. Yeah. It's you. I was stressed. Yeah. I was so pumped. So pumped on that. Sorry. I think you're going to basically use. Yeah,
Right. All right. We're gonna go ahead and get started. There are refreshments over there. If anybody gets hungry in the middle of the presentation, feel free to get up and get a snack. There is a restroom in that corner as well. So we have a really special presentation today. I'm super excited. And if you haven't been here before, welcome to Mueller Field Station. We host these types of presentations about once a month. As the weather gets nicer and people don't want to be inside, we might switch to evening paddles or some sort of educational walk. So if you're interested in kind of staying up to date on our events, we do have a sign up sheet here for our newsletter. So go ahead maybe on your way out and write your name down. We're also super active on social media, so we do share a lot of our events and stuff like that on those platforms. So I'm going to just go ahead and pass it over to our awesome presenters. So if you want to do a brief introduction for yourselves.
Hey there.
Hi.
Well, thank you so much for coming today, and thanks Chelsea for having us. We're here from the Wolf Mountain Nature Center, which is in Smyrna, New York. We're going to be talking to you a bit today about what it's like working for a wolf sanctuary. And then we're also going to learn a bit about some of the natural history of our native and introduced canid species here today. So just a little bit about myself. If I can get this to work, there we go. So I am actually an alumni of FLCC. I was here years ago before there was the Fish and Wildlife Program, got my degree in Conservation of Natural Resources, transferred on to SUNY ESF, got my degree in Wildlife Science. I did do some field work for the grad students there. I participated in a coyote scat assessment. So we were trying to figure out what the coyotes' preferred diet was, what their diet consisted of. And then I also participated in a river otter survey, basically canoeing all of the Finger Lakes looking for river otter latrines. And Mueller Field Station is actually one of the sites where we studied. So that is very cool that I get to return. Most of my professional work is in zookeeping and education. And so I started off as an intern at the Wolf Mountain Nature Center years ago. And then I went on to be a California sea lion trainer and a swing keeper at the Utica Zoo. So a swing keeper means I worked in every section, pretty much with any animal there. After that, I did do some work as a exotic animal handler for a local organization called Bridges for Brain Injury. And then I landed at FLCC. I was, for several years, a K-12 educator with Chelsea. But I continue to be an adjunct instructor. I teach wildlife field techniques and I co-teach field study of birds.
Before I get too much further, you did hit record on it?
I think so, yes. Pretty sure. I also supervise an internship, recording in progress, through the FLCC Mueller Field Station. So FLCC Mueller Field Station has a SWAMP internship program that's science with a mindful purpose. And I actually, I supervise the animal care internship. So our interns come to learn from me at my nonprofit, Friendly Lakes Wildlife Center. And then they also learn from Will and our staff at the Wolf Mountain Nature Center. And we also work in partnership with the Seneca Park Zoo. So I'm coming to you today as the director of the Wolf Mountain Nature Center. I've been the director there since 2021, I believe. But I tend to be more of a satellite figure at Wolf Mountain. So I'm very happy to be joined today with Karley Bush, who is a regular animal caretaker. For some reason, I'm not.
Yeah, that's
just use this.
Hello. So as Erin said, I am Karley Bush. I also am an alumni of FLCC. I do have 2 degrees, both a liberal arts and sciences, and then a natural resources conservation degree from FLCC. I have been with Wolf Mountain 9 years now, and we are in our 18th year open to the public. So we have been there since 2006. And that is also when we got our first 2 wolves, which we'll get into in a little bit. I actually did start at Wolf Mountain as a summer intern after my degree in natural resources conservation and have been there ever since. We all do wear many hats as volunteers, and mine currently are the volunteer and intern coordinator, events coordinator, and then animal caretaker. I also do a lot of help out in the gift shop as well. And then I am also on the board of directors. I am the vice president. So very, very involved. We do have a core staff of about 8 volunteers right now, which we are hoping to expand. But at the moment, that is our animal caretakers and caretaker assistants. And then we do also have 1 just regular volunteer who is at the point that he's working into being an assistant. It is a very long training process, especially working with wild canids, and being in New York State, they are designated as dangerous animals. So that's why it is such a long training process. There we go. So now on to who we are as a center. And Will Pryor is our owner and founder. He is our head animal caretaker and curator as well, resident ecologist. He and his partner Pam do live at the center, so there are staff there, and also not just them, but other staff that live closer that pop in 24/7. We do have staff monitoring the animals. He is an expert on wild canids in human care, animal behavior, exhibit design, and natural landscaping. We will get into our enclosures a little bit later and how we design those. He does have a bachelor's degree in environmental science and a master's degree in environmental policy. And then also did a lot of his training in order to open up the nature center and get his licenses out at Wolf Park in Indiana. They are, I believe, in their 52nd year of wolves in captivity, and really were the start of wolves in captivity and research about them. So they are a very big partner of ours. We still work very closely with them, and that is, they are the go-to at this point. So there is that, and then, oh, did I miss something? Yes, and has literally thousands of hours of hands-on experience working with the wolves, coyotes, and fox that we have at the center, and both before when he was doing his training to get the licenses. For Pam, Pam is Will's partner also at the center. She is an animal caretaker, kid shop manager, and office manager and tour guide since 2012. She did originally start out being asked to just run the gift shop, and the very next day we had coyote puppies. So she was thrown right in and learned by a lot of experience. She does also currently work part-time as a veterinary assistant in the surgical unit with our current vet. So we are in contact with them through her daily, definitely weekly, if not daily, and even without her, our vet staff do come to the center routinely, even just as visitors. So we do have that staff there very regularly. Pam also has been a puppy parent to various litters of the 4 coyotes, 8 fox kits, and 15 wolf pups over the years that she's been there. So very hundreds, if not thousands of hours of hands-on experience for her as well. And then she also is a retired teaching assistant for special education students and does a lot of our educating program running for that sort of thing at the center as well. So our center, our mission statement, we are there to observe animal behaviors and present objective educational programs, foster appreciation and understanding of the intrinsic value of wolves, coyotes, and foxes and the natural environment and their relationships with natural systems, and also to develop unique and interesting environmental educational programs for a diverse audience. So we do not only open to the public just as a regular thing on Sundays. Most of the year we are closed hunting season, the beginning of hunting season every year, just because it is very stressful for the animals with all of the guns going off. And then we also do close basically Christmas to President's Day weekend. We are in a very rural area and the weather is pretty bad. Our driveway becomes pretty impassable. And also on top of all of that, January is breeding season for most of our animals. So things are just a little bit odd all around, and it's easier just to not have extra stimulation for the animals during that time. Other than that, we are open Sundays noon to 4, and then July and August, we do expand our hours a little bit to accommodate summer. So we are open Fridays and Saturdays noon to 3 on those days in addition to Sundays. So we do, in addition to being just open to the general public, a lot of educational programs that are specialized to either college groups or a lot of elementary school groups. We are getting into field trip season at the moment. And I believe we have a group scheduled at least once a week, if not multiple in a week from now until almost June. So it is getting into a very busy season for us. And then we also do accommodate private tours for things like homeschool groups, scout groups, whether they be Eagle Scouts, Girl Scouts, and are able to see what they are looking to learn, what badges they're working on, that sort of thing, and tailor programs specifically to what they're interested in. Our core values at the center are to have large spacious enclosures for all of our animals, keep as close to naturalistic diets and lifestyles as we can in a captive situation, provide socialization and enrichment for all of the animals, and allow them freedom of choice. So we do socialize all of our animals at the center. That means that we do work with them, some of our animals from as young as 5 days old. Usually we try to start between 10 and 12 days old is kind of the sweet spot. That allows us to, one, interact with them before their eyes and ears are open. When they are that young, if we take them from their natural parents, their mothers and fathers, after their eyes and ears have opened, the shock of being pulled from that environment and then the stimulation of seeing humans and being kind of forced into that environment could make them very ill or even kill them at that age. So the 10 to 12 days allows them to get a jump start on their immunity from their mother's milk. All of the colostrum that they need to jumpstart that immune system is already in their system in that 10 to 12 days. And then we do also vaccinate additionally with them being captive animals, just to make sure that they're covered from distemper, parvo, all of that. Then that allows them to kind of create a bond with us before even realizing that we are different from their natural parents, that we are feeding them every couple of hours, cleaning them, holding them, so they are just getting acclimated to us with the feeling of us, associating us with food, all of those comforts. And then as they grow, we do slowly work them into more of a natural environment. We do allow them outside for short periods of time as they grow at an age appropriate rate, where they would be kind of exploring out of the den on their own at that stage. And then that allows us to build that bond and that trust and work with them as adults. That way we are able to actually go into the enclosures and work with them hands-on. That allows us access to vet care. We do have to do even routine rabies vaccines for the adult animals since they are in our care. And also just routine visits as there are injuries happen, they get older and have health issues, that sort of thing. Being in their environment is not stressful for them because we have created that bond and that socialization. That doesn't mean that they are not still wild animals and don't have those wild instincts. It just means that they accept us in most cases within their enclosures and to have that physical contact with them. We are always, again, giving them the freedom of choice for our animals. Just because they do allow us into enclosures when we are able doesn't mean that we go in if we think that there will be an issue. If they are showing a lot of signs of being territorial or just not wanting interaction that day, we will not go in the enclosure because that is their home and we want to make sure that they're comfortable and feel safe there. And that allows us to keep facilitating that bond of trust with them. So that also with our enclosures being as large and spacious as they are, allows the animals the opportunity to disappear and not be seen by the public when we're open if they don't want to be. We don't call the animals or make them come up to be seen if it's something that they have clearly chosen not to do. So we do allow them that freedom of choice as much as possible where there are especially a lot of zoos, they are in very small enclosures. There's not a lot of cover because the idea is to have as many people see them as possible, regardless of the animal's feelings on that subject. And for our ambassadors, we do currently have 14 gray wolves of several different subspecies. We have timber wolves, tundra, Alaskan, and Arctic wolves. Our newest 4 are just under a year old, and they are Alaskan wolves. They are very much larger than you would expect them to be for under a year old and still have growing to do.
You sure are.
Yes. We also have 3 eastern coyotes, 3 Arctic fox, and 2 gray fox, which are our newest subspecies that we have brought to the center. The gray fox are also just under a year old at this point. And location, so we are quite a hike from here. I think it's worth it. I do go out, I live in Palmyra, and I do go out to volunteer weekly. We do also have a lot of volunteers. Most of our core staff is at least an hour from the center, and they also make that trip every week. We do have some more seasonal staff or specialty event staff. Our furthest Nikki comes from Massachusetts for our special events. And up until just a little bit ago, Alex, who was a former intern turned regular volunteer, was coming from Long Island periodically. So we do have a very large, very dedicated staff that we are very thankful for. Our property is just about 70 acres of forests, meadows, and ponds, and we're in Smyrna, New York, which is in Shenango County, very central New York State. And we are regulated and licensed by USDA and DEC at the federal and state levels. I think I already covered the weekly hours and tours. So again, we are open weekly, noon to 4 on Sundays. July and August, we do expand to noon to 3 on Fridays and Saturdays as well. We do offer a guided tour at 12:30 on Sundays for sure. We do also by request, as long as there are enough staff around on that Friday and Saturday days. And then sometimes we also do offer an additional second tour at 2 p.m. on the Sundays, depending on interest in staffing. We do also have the educational programs. So as I said, we're getting into our very busy season for school field trips. We also will see maybe a couple of college groups come through as they're getting the end of their year wrapped up. But typically we see those more in the end of summer, beginning of fall, when they're doing kind of like meet and greet field trips, that sort of thing to kick off the year. And then we do also offer the scheduled programming as well. And all of that information, if you were looking for a private tour, is on our website. We do also have some hiking. We call them hiking trails, which always throws people off. They really are more just nature trails, a nice walk through the woods. And then we do have picnic tables. We have bird houses, and we do actually have some bald eagles that frequently fly over the center. And a lot of people that come and just do a picnic, make a day out of the whole trip. We do host, as some of our special events, photography sessions. So we do, this particular platform is our platform that is only available for photography sessions, that is on the back side of our main pack enclosure. We do also have a new viewing platform / photography platform that is within our nature center perimeter fence that is available for the public on Sundays, as long as we do have good weather and staffing for that. Camping with the Wolves, this is one of our most popular programs. We usually sell out well before we get to summer. We do 3 sessions each summer, and we did not get the dates on it.
I did not put all those dates.
I know that the weekend of July 28th is one of our camping events. And then the first one would be 2 weeks before that, the weekend of July 13th, and then 2 weekends after that, which is the second weekend in August. I believe it's the 9th and 10th. So those 3 sessions we do hold yearly. They are just kind of a nice behind the scenes look at what we do. We are available for check-in starting at noon when we open that day, and then once we close at 3 on Saturday, we kick the rest of the public out and we gather as a group for all of the campers, do a little going over the rules, meeting everybody. Then you guys or the campers get to help feed the animals, so we get to do a little bit of the animal caretaking end of things. Once we wrap up feeding the animals, we feed the people. We have just like a hot dogs and hamburgers cookout at the teepee area, which as you can kind of see in the right picture there, we've got a little fire pit. We do have a howl night that coincides with each of the campouts. So we do our special communication program. We do open up to the public again just for a couple hours, do our communication program. Once we finish with that, it's usually, if not already dark, very close. So again, we kick the public out, close the gates for just the campers to be there, and then we go down to the teepee area for the fire. We usually have someone that brings a guitar and does some campfire songs for us, or sometimes will tell some native stories depending on how his voice is feeling. And then the biggest thing with the campouts is that we do have 2 of the teepees available for rent. So that is a very cool, unique experience, getting to stay in the teepee for the night. And then you do hear the wolves howl throughout the night periodically as well. It's just a really, really amazing time. And then we do a continental breakfast in the morning, and also hike on the nature trails early. That way you guys can visit the photography platform that we have just for the special events. And then we wrap up usually pretty early before we open to the public at noon for Sunday. So those are posted on the website, as well as all of our photography sessions in the store. If there is something that is not available, that means that we've already sold out for that session. We also do periodic enrichment events. So the 2 that we do still have, well, 3 that we have left for the year are Wolves and Watermelons and Winter with the Wolves. And then the next one is on the next slide. These are, as you can see, just kind of fun little things that we put together, whether it be the wrapped boxes. I believe that was a dog Pong toy of some sort.
The Easter egg.
Yeah, the Easter egg. And then for Wolves and Watermelons, we do hollow out watermelons and stuff all of the, whether it be the fruit or the boxes, with treats for them. So we kind of go through the freezers and save special things for them for these events, whether it be like rabbit or squirrel that hunters have donated. I believe we are working on birthday celebrations at this moment. So last weekend, we had short ribs and some ham in there, along with chicken and kidneys. Kidneys. So we do try to switch up their diet a little bit and give them just things that they wouldn't normally have for these events, just to make it a little more interesting. And then again, provides them that enrichment of figuring out what it is. This past weekend, the short ribs were the favorite by far of all of the enclosures. So it's just also kind of cool to see which the animals gravitate towards and all of that. The other big event that we do have is our annual Honoring the Spirit of the Wolf Festival. This is our annual fundraiser every year. It does fall on the Sunday of Indigenous Peoples Weekend. It is a 5-hour day for us, so we are 11 to 4 on those days. And we do in addition to the pumpkins filled with treats of various sorts for the animals, we also have food trucks there for the people. We usually try to get kettle corn there, which is the very most popular one. And then we also do have last year, and we hope to have again, Cornell Raptors does a program. We do have a dog sled of Smoky Hill. I always say Smoky Mountain.
You're good.
And get those mixed up with Smoky Hill. That do dog sled demonstrations, and actually Will and Pam's 2 domestic huskies at the house did come from the same bloodline. So sometimes they get to come and make a guest appearance and run the sleds as well, give that a try and see their siblings. But then it is also just a very big day. If it is your first time visiting, it is a nice event, but we always do recommend to make a return visit. With it being a big fundraiser, we have a lot going on. It is not the normal for the animals. So we always like to make that known. We have signs posted everywhere, all of that, that this is sort of a stressful day for them, but it is, in the grand scheme of things, just 5 hours throughout, and it's once a year that they are at these stress levels. And after that, they have a chance to just decompress and do their own thing. A lot of the animals, especially the older ones that have done this a few times, are used to it, especially like Tamarack is a champ. He is usually front and center for the whole thing because he just likes seeing all of the people and knowing what's going on. And then they have the whole week and more usually to just decompress, because we don't typically get a lot of visitors the next weekend, just because most people plan for the big event. And then, as I mentioned, we are currently working through birthdays. We have Maria, one of our former interns there, decorating a cake. And again, we try to make it fun for them. I believe that had a dog safe peanut butter frosting, just like a basic vanilla cake with some blueberries, a nice mouse, and I think that's tuna. So maybe this was for the foxes. Yeah, so does not sound very appetizing to us, but they love all of the little concoctions that they get. And then we have in the past done things like trying to do hanging boxes like piñatas. Those are not as popular with the younger wolves that we have now. The first group of Arctic Alaskans, Tala she loved doing things like that and would rip them right out of the tree, her father and brother as well. But the newer wolves are a little bit more cautious of things that swing and hang like that. And then we do have the little foxes coming up June 2nd as well, and we will celebrate the gray foxes then too. And then we also do our communication programs. We do try to do them monthly throughout the year, and then in the summer we do them bi-weekly just to accommodate with the campouts, and that people are a little bit looking for more activities to do in the summer usually. And then October is our last one of the year. After that, it just gets dark so soon and it's so cold in the evening. It's not really enjoyable to be out there, even if you're hearing the wolves howl. And then we do also, we are fully volunteer staff. So that is how we operate. We are always looking for volunteers that have the drive and the passion to do what we do, even without necessarily working with the animals directly. As I mentioned at the beginning, it is a very long training process if it is something that you are looking to do as far as working hands-on with the animals, because we do need to go through a rigorous training program, as well as want to make sure that the dedication is there to the center, not just the desire to pet a wolf, which is something that we do get a lot of inquiries about. Internships, we also offer summer internships currently, just because that is our busiest season of the year, with us being open additional hours, and it also gives the interns a chance. A lot of them do get college credit, so having the nicer hours allows them to be able to work enough to receive up to 12 credit hours for some of our interns. And then Shaniqua, who is our very first picture here, she also was a general volunteer before she was eligible to do an internship, then did an internship, and that is why she was able to work hands-on with the animals as an intern. She already was an animal caretaker at that point. But then we also have done programs like library, educational reading to children. Then we also, that actually is our vet clinic. We have been able to do some behind the scenes kind of things with them, when we've taken animals. And then I believe, no, that's at the center. I was thinking that was the one from Mueller here. So we did a couple summers ago do a field trip with our interns here so that Erin could show them around the field station and what we do here. And then that far picture is our last honoring the spirit of the wolf event with as many former interns as we had at the center. So we do, especially for that event, have a lot of return staff come and just plan on being at the center for that event. So that was a really nice thing to see, that we had that many former interns. This is all of our contact information. We apologize, I forgot to bring brochures in case anyone was interested. But we can easily be found on Facebook, Instagram, and then our website, the Wolf Mountain Nature Center. We did also just put out our newest edition of our quarterly newsletter. If that was something that you were interested in, you can get on the email list for that. And then we do, if we have any closures, special events, anything like that, we do try to keep Facebook and Instagram as well as our website updated as much as possible, especially as we get into colder months. If there are going to be closures because of the weather, we do put that on our voice message as well for people calling in. No, the next up is going to be Erin. Was there any questions that I could answer at this point? I know we'll have time at the end as well if anyone thinks of anything.
All right. Thank you, Carmen. Okay. I just want to change this a little. Oh, does it?
Yeah.
That's fancy.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, so I want to talk to you folks a bit about the natural history of the canids in our region. And I'm going to try to keep it as short and sweet as possible so we can leave lots of time at the end for questions. But we have 6 canid species that occur in the state. I will be covering 4 of those. And I also just want to point out that where I could in this PowerPoint, we used as much of our own photographs as we could, but for things like Mexican wolves and red wolves, we do not have those animals at the center, nor do we have red fox. So I used my own pictures or web images for those. But today we're going to talk gray fox, which is a native species, red fox, also a native species, gray wolf and red wolf used to occur in New York State, but have since been extirpated, which means they were pushed out, eliminated. They no longer occur here as a breeding population. We also have a non-native canid, which is the coyote, and of course, domestic dogs of various shapes and sizes. Starting off with the smaller canids, let's talk a bit about the foxes. So at Wolf Mountain, we have gray foxes, which you can see here. This is either fern or trillium. I can't really tell them apart.
Fern.
Fern, the male.
Yes.
So this is fern. We have the gray foxes, and we also have Arctic foxes at the center. So gray fox, Eurocyan scenario argentis, is a native species. But we don't tend to see them often in this area because they're primarily a forest dwelling species, and they're also extremely elusive and one of our most solitary canids. So they're not particularly well studied. Also, they happen to be most active during nocturnal hours or crepuscular hours, so from dawn, dusk, and at nighttime. They're actually our most omnivorous canid. All of our canids are pretty opportunistic and will eat pretty much anything, including vegetation, but these guys have a higher portion of vegetation in their diet. But they also eat a large amount of small mammals, herpetofauna like reptiles and amphibians, birds and their eggs, invertebrates like insects, and also fruit, veg, and agricultural crops. They're incredibly opportunistic and will definitely scavenge carrion from roadkill given the opportunity. They're kind of one of our more interesting canids is in that they are genetically unique. They have no extant living ancestors, no current living ancestors or close relatives. And they're actually thought to be one of the first canids to diverge from the common canid karyotype that births both canids and felids. Gray fox have a lot of felid-like qualities still. And you can see from the pictures I stole from the internet over here, they are excellent tree climbers. And in fact, we do kind of refer to them as gray tree foxes at the center. So they are able to do that more so than other canids because they can actually rotate their forearms, much like a cat, and shimmy up a tree. They have semi-retractable claws, again, much like a cat, that helps them climb trees with ease. And they're just really great arboreal acrobats. They can easily jump from one tree to another on branches. They actually do mostly den inside of hollow trees, but will still excavate burrows on the ground, live in brush piles, and it's not uncommon to find them in a crotch of a tree, like the picture all the way to the right. So, how to ID gray foxes? This can be tricky for some people. We have some awesome images that Chelsea was kind enough to send to us of gray fox right here in Mueller Field Station. This newest picture was captured in December of 2023, but the only other picture that Chelsea could find of gray fox on Mueller Field Station was taken in 2013. So that's 10 years between each capture of that animal on this property. And that can mean many things. It's not the right habitat. They want to be more in Cummings Nature Center than they want to be in the swamp at Mueller Field Station. So it could just be we're having a juvenile dispersing through, moving on to other territory, looking for mates, looking for different habitat. But it could also be that they are outcompeted by larger canids. It is a dog-eat-dog world after all. So how to ID them? It is kind of hard, especially when we have college students who are not super familiar with ID, especially in infrared, to be able to determine whether they're looking at a red fox or a gray fox in this black and white image. So typically gray fox have grayish pelage, meaning fur, and they do have a good amount of red and white in that coat. But the big identifying feature for them is they have a black line. This one's kind of bent in a weird way. They have a black line that runs all the way from the base of the tail down to the tip of the tail. So if you can see the black tip in this picture up here, that tells us immediately this is a gray fox. In comparison to red foxes, they have shorter, rounder ears. They have much shorter legs. And they tend to be maybe about a few pounds lighter than red fox. They tend to average around 9 pounds, whereas red fox tend to average about 11 pounds. So red fox are the larger of the two fox. Red fox, super prolific, super common. They are actually in every single state except for Hawaii. They've also been introduced to a lot of other areas of the world, like Australia, where they've become sort of an ecological issue. They become a nuisance and they start eating too many kiwis and things like that. But they are really, really well adapted to pretty much live anywhere. And so you will find them in farmlands, brushy hedgerows, open grasslands, forest edge, even in urban and suburban environments. As I said with the gray fox, They do have pointier ears, longer leg. But again, it's hard to tell what you're looking at in a black and white camera trap. So what we do is we tell our students, regardless of what color the coat is, these are both red foxes. This one is the typical red face. This one is actually called a cross fox. It is something that's crossed between a typical red face and a melanistic all black face fox. No matter what color this animal is, white tip on the tail tells you that this is a red fox. You can also see black stockings. And so no matter what color the coat of an animal is, gray fox always have a black tip on the tail, red fox always have white tip on the tail, and black stockings. And again, these foxes are primarily nocturnal or crepuscular, so dusk through the night into the dawn. Incredibly opportunistic and omnivorous. So these guys have a really unique kind of stalk and pounce hunting strategy. Has anyone ever seen, maybe in person or in a video, red fox hunting in the snow? You generally see them like kind of looking at the snow. Their ears are moving around like a little sonar. And basically once they have located their prey, they're gonna jump as far up into the air as they can and face plant into that snow. And the strategy there is they're trying to collapse those little tunnels that all of the mice are running through. So we call that subnivean hunting, below snow hunting. All canids regularly cache food. They will basically take whatever leftovers they have, dig a little hole, bury it in there, cover it with their nose, and they may actually even defecate or urinate on it so you can find it later. And again, red foxes are pretty, it's pretty common for them to outcompete smaller foxes within their range. So this isn't the best graphic, but you can see kind of largest to smallest of our native canids here. So largest, we have our wolves, our eastern coyote, and our red fox, and then gray fox are right below them. Red fox also outcompetes Arctic fox as well. They're moving northward into their range and taking over valuable denning area, and also potentially introducing things like mange to Arctic fox, which if you're an Arctic fox who relies on your dense winter coat to survive, mange is a death sentence. So something to keep an eye on over the next few decades. Moving on to the top dogs, we'll talk about some of the canids of the past. So New York State's former apex predators are Canis lupus, the gray wolf, and Canis rufus, the red wolf. They were both historically present in the state, though New York is kind of the northernmost part of red wolf's range, so gray wolves were more prolific. 1890 was our last confirmed population of gray wolves in the state. Their causes of extirpation were like really extreme persecution in the form of bounty programs, habitat loss, and fragmentation. But it's not all bad news. There have been some efforts to recover the population, the most well-known being the Yellowstone reintroduction program beginning in 1995. AZA chapter zoos will actually participate in the SSP, which is the Species Survival Program. They do this for Mexican wolves and red wolves. It's part of a captive breeding program to try to maintain those genetics, raise them in captivity with the goal of releasing them into the wild, and try to keep those wild populations going. We also see a good amount of natural expansion of wolves through the Great Lakes. And a new win for wolves is as of December 2023, Colorado has introduced 4.6 wolves, which means 4 males and 6 females. There are many subspecies of gray wolves, but they are all gray wolves. So there really are going to be 5 main subspecies of gray wolves. And as Karley said, we have had the majority of these at our center. Arctic wolves. Further up north, Alaskan timber wolves. These tend to be the larger body wolves. They need to have those larger bodies to retain their body heat in a cold environment. We have the eastern timber wolf, which would have been our native wolf species. We have the Great Plains wolf, Mexican wolf, and of course, red wolf is a completely different species. So wolves occupied this entire continent at one point. Just some basic wolf anatomy for you guys. The average weight of our wolves is between 85 and 120 pounds, though males of over 160 pounds have been documented. I do not know how much turtle used to weigh.
140.
But one of our largest Arctic wolves, dancing turtle, he was about 140 pounds and his head came up to about here on me. So very impressive creatures. They have extremely powerful neck and jaws. 42 teeth, including 2 separate 2.5-inch canines. They have an extremely strong bite force of about 1,500 pounds, which surpasses that of cougars, leopards, and hyenas. They have extra large feet adapted to running in deep snow and over rough terrain. In fact, wolves can run in short bursts for up to 40 miles per hour. And they can even travel up to 70 miles per day following a herd of caribou. All of our canids have a double layer coat. So you have your soft undercoat, which acts as an insulation, and then you have thick, oily guard hairs, which is basically just waterproofing. Wolf communication, I'm going to give you the abridged version of that in hopes that you will come and learn the rest of it at Hollow Night. There are many ways in which wolves communicate. Probably one of the most important would be scent. And you can see somebody rolling in something, tamarack, rolling in something delicious. So wolves use scent markers in the form of urine, scat, or scratching to mark their territory. In fact, they even have pheromones that they secrete from glands in the bottom of their feet. So with every step they take, they are leaving their scent behind. Body language is another big one. And as you can see from that picture, it is basically a variety of dominant and submissive behaviors, similar to that you would see in your domestic dogs at home. I would say the best time to see those kinds of behaviors at Wolf Mountain, feeding time.
Yes, absolutely. That is, Aguajo is the gray colored wolf. He is the uncle of Sakari, the darker one that he is disciplining.
And then vocalizations. So everybody wants to hear wolves howl, but they are a lot of other vocalizations that they do. In fact, wolves still bark to alert the rest of the pack of intruders. So that is why your dogs bark. They are alerting you, their pack, of potential intruders. Alphas will do something called tooth clacking, which will alert the rest of the pack that it's time to form a hunting party. And then again, of course, howling is more of their long distance form of communication. They can communicate with each other up to 10 miles away from each other. And there's really 2 main types of howls that they're going to use. There's the rallying howl, which is really meant to unite the pack members or locate all the pack members. And then there are defensive howls. And those are really meant to define their boundaries, and discourage rival packs from invading their own territory. What are wolves like, or wolf packs like? Well, they're essentially nuclear families. They are generally 4 to 7 animals. The pack size is mostly reliant on the size of the territory and availability of resources. You do sometimes get solitary wolves, which tend to be more dispersing juveniles and elderly wolves who have been pushed from the pack. But most wolf families consist of an alpha breeding pair, alpha female and male. You have, and the alphas are the only ones in the pack who are allowed to breed. No one else is allowed to have a baby. If they want to do that, they got to go off and find their own territory and form their own pack. There's the beta wolf, which tends to be the second in command. That's the pack enforcer. You have yearlings and other mid-ranking wolves. You have the omega wolf, which tends to be the lowest ranking wolf, but they kind of act as like the court jester. Their job is to diffuse tension within the pack. And then pups are cared for by the entire pack. And this is actually a picture of our wolves in one of their ponds in the main enclosure. Our largest wolf enclosure is over 9 acres and has 2 ponds. So you can see they can still go hunting and fishing if they so choose. And we've had many wolf pups at the center. As Karley was saying earlier, they are, there's something called altricial, meaning they are born blind and helpless. But they grow so quickly. I don't know, what are we estimating? Maybe 8 weeks here, 9 weeks?
Yeah.
Maybe several months in the middle, and then towards the end, at least 6 months at that point.
The middle, they're probably 2 to 3 months.
Those are the newest Arctic puppies.
Yeah.
And those are the same Arctic puppies all the way to the right,
Yes.
just 7 months later.
A couple, yeah.
So really, it only takes about 6 months for them to grow large enough to look almost like a mini version of their parents, and that is when they start hunting with the rest of the pack. But wolves are not going to be sexually mature until they're at least 2 years of age. So what's for dinner? Well, if you're a wolf, just about anything. Does not surprise anybody to know that ungulates are their #1 food source. These are hooved animals, deer, moose, bison, things like that. And wolves are really good at selecting, at culling the herd. And they're going to select basically the easiest meal to catch. Well, so that may be injured animals, it might be elderly animals, it might be babies. But they do eat a good amount of small mammals still, fish, reptiles, amphibians, birds, insects, fruits, nuts. Our wolves really like to pluck apples out of their apple trees. They also very gingerly will pluck berries off bushes. And they will chase after raven who are trying to steal their leftovers. So wolves may not eat every day, but ideally, they would consume about 3 to 4 pounds of meat every day. And the alpha is going to eat first. They're going to go after the heart, liver, kidneys, all those delicious high protein organs. And this is when pack structure becomes most important, is during hunting and feeding time, and for good reason. Deer are very well adapted to avoiding predation from wolves. So a wolf pack needs to have a very well organized effort when it comes to hunting an animal this much larger than them. For comparison, wolves are about 70 to 130 pounds. An elk would be 165 to 750 pounds. A moose might be 440 to 1,800 pounds. And so when your food source outweighs you by that much, your team has got to be really well organized. because injuries absolutely can happen. Just a little background on basic wolf ecology. So the main prey would be ungulates, the deer. And we can see by looking at Yellowstone how the absence of wolves can affect a landscape and what can happen when you reintroduce wolves back into that landscape. So when there are not enough predators to trim these ungulate herds to fit their range, we have some bad things happen. So overgrazing is going to eliminate a lot of different plant and tree species. We have increased erosion, particularly along our waterways. And basically we see an overall loss of habitat and an overall loss of biodiversity. So these pictures over here, the one on the left, that is Yellowstone prior to wolf reintroduction. So you can see that the deer on Yellowstone, they basically browse that entire landscape into, as Aldo Leopold calls it, anemic destitute. It's just done. But after reintroducing wolves into the landscape, they started to trim that elk population into a much more sustainable level. You see that a lot of that understory has grown back. A lot of the aspen have come back, and that means a lot of the bird species came back. A lot of our small game animals came back, and our herds of ungulates became much more healthy because there was more for them to eat. So wolves are absolutely a keystone species. When you take that keystone out of an ecosystem, you will see negative cascading effects. And when you put that keystone back, after time, you will start to see those positive effects come back as well. A little bit of sad things to talk about. The history and persecution of wolves in this country. And so we kind of have to start at the beginning, thinking about how early humans did share ecological niches with wolves. We actually followed the same herds of animals across those glacial land bridges. Indigenous people viewed the wolf as an elder teacher, and they observed wolves at great length. Wolves taught humans how to hunt, and they are still a central figure in many hunting ceremonies today. And historically, many of our Great Plains tribes actually also had wolf hybrids among their domesticated dogs as well. So you see this picture here is a picture showing the relationship between a Cheyenne hunter and his wolf-like dog companions. So very close relationship between the two. But when Europeans came to this country, we brought with us fear and hatred for these animals built on old world mythology. And we still spread that mythology today in the form of Little Red Riding Hood, the big bad wolf. This is anti-wolf propaganda. So unfortunately, European colonists waged one of the most ruthless and most relentless wars waged on one species onto another in the history of this planet. And it was through bounty hunting programs. So it began in 1630 in Massachusetts with colonists starting poison hunting and trapping campaigns. It did peak during the era of wolfers. So between 1870 and 1877, more than 100,000 wolves were killed every single year. So that's over 700,000 wolves in less than a decade. The last bounty of $35 was paid for a wolf in Minnesota in 1960. And wolves were added to the Endangered Species Act in the lower 48s in 1974. So let's take a look at the historic range of gray wolf. This was their range at the time they were listed in 1974. It's a pretty big difference. I have some other maps to show you. So this one's a little bit more technical. You can see in the blue, that is our historical range. In the purple, those are actually occupied ranges. So we have the Yellowstone population up here. We have the Great Lakes population over there, and then a very small Mexican wolf population. In the black is where we have the highest human density. Notice what doesn't intersect. You don't have wolves living in areas of high human density. And the numbers are still pretty low. So we still only have about 12 wild red wolves in North Carolina. Again, a different species. We have, these numbers have changed probably since 2021, but we have very small population of Mexican wolves. We have small populations in the Pacific Northwest, the Northern Rockies, Western Great Lakes. We're still seeing some expansion in, but it's hard to get the protections we need federally because we still have healthy populations in Alaska. What's bad for some animals can be good for others. So we did lose our wolves, but we gained another animal, the eastern coyote. So most people are familiar with coyotes, but a lot of people aren't aware that they don't belong here. They are not native to New York State. They have only been firmly established in the state since about the 1940s. Essentially, what happened is when, in the 1909, when the government funded the first national pest control program to eliminate our native apex predators, we eliminated wolves and eastern cougars in vast numbers. They were extirpated, wiped out pretty much completely from the Northeast. But this left a void that smaller meso predators like coyote could then come in and take advantage of those new ecological niches. So historically, coyotes were endemic to the north or the western US. They were only occurred there and nowhere else in the world. Now they're pretty much all over the continent. So why did the coyote succeed when wolves and cougars didn't? This does not mean that coyote were not persecuted just as heavily as wolves and eastern coyote or eastern cougar, but they have a different strategy to counteract that persecution. So while wolves were being eliminated, coyote numbers grew. Despite attempts to kill them through hunting, poisoning campaigns, and trapping, they had some special adaptations that avoided being extirpated. So when hunted, coyotes do have larger litters earlier in the year. When you put persecution on a species, the survivors of that species are going to be the smartest and best adapted, and you're basically creating an artificial natural selection at that point. But again, when you are killing coyotes, you have a loss of family structure. Coyote packs are not unlike wolf packs, and they are nuclear families, and only the alpha pair are allowed to breed. But when you kill off the alpha pair, you're fracturing that family, and one pack turns into 2 or 3, and you get into a lot of what I call teen mom situations. So basically, coyotes got to be a lot smarter, and they have physiological defenses towards persecution. Again, they were firmly established in New York State by 1940. And they continue to expand as natural succession turns our old abandoned farmland back into healthy forest habitat. So how many coyotes are in New York State now? Well, the most recent number I can find was from 2010, when it was estimated that we had between 20 to 30,000 pairs of coyotes during the summer. So this is when their population is at the highest. A little bit of ID, probably the most significant is size difference. This is a gray wolf. This is an eastern coyote. So a massive size difference. You guys are welcome to come up and check these out before you leave today. So coyotes tend to have taller, pointier ears. They have a black tip on the tail, and a much more narrow snout in comparison to gray wolves. There are actually two subspecies of coyotes. There's the original western subspecies, which is a smaller animal weighing about 18 to 30 pounds. They tend to have lighter colored, shorter fur. And then our eastern coyotes, which we have in this region, they are larger. They weigh about 35 to 50 pounds. The 50 is pretty big for a coyote. And they also have longer fur and darker colored coat. So eastern coyotes are thought to be more intelligent and larger species than western coyotes. Why do you guys think that might be? Thought I heard somebody say something. Because they are bigger. Why might they be bigger than their western coyotes? Well, I'm just gonna jump ahead and tell you, it's because they're hybrids. They're actually hybrids between wolves and western coyotes. So DNA evidence has shown all of our wolves, coyotes, and dogs actually all have 78 chromosomes. They're genetically neighboring species, and they can, and in fact, do interbreed. So this is why some people call the eastern coyote a coy wolf. And this also means that all of our eastern coyotes have some varying degree of wolf in them. They are the last remnants of our native wolves. I have a little clip from the Meet the Coy Wolf documentary, which will explain this whole process to you guys better.
Eastern coyotes. They also go by the more apt name, the coy wolf.
To understand the history of the coy wolf, you really got to go back to before Columbus set off onto the continent from the Mississippi over. So this whole eastern part of North America would have been deciduous forest. So forest left the eastern wolf would have occupied all of this. So now Europeans come across a massive movement of settlers. They cut down more and more of the trees. First thing I see is eastern wolves causing problems with their livestock. These guys start killing wolves, causing problems, hunting. So as this whole area was deforested, the wolf provided opportunity.
Smaller coyotes from the southwest seized this opportunity and began to move northward, occupying territory now abandoned by wolves. The next 300 years saw coyotes arrive at one of the last safe havens for wolves, Algonquin Park. Here, the wolf population, depleted by persecution, began to see their natural enemy, the coyote, as a potential mate, which led to the birth of the coy wolf around 1919. There's much that's unknown about this new creature, but what scientists do know is that it's a hybrid between a coyote and a wolf.
In New York State Museum, we have an archive of coyotes and wolves in the mammal collections. And so you can tell if you look at the skulls, for example, here's a wolf and a coyote. So you can see you've got a large predator, a elk and moose and deer. And the smaller western coyote, which typically eats things like rabbits and mice and fruit. And then we have in between these, the eastern coyote. It's much larger than the western coyote, but still quite a bit smaller than the wolf. And so this is what we found to be a large type of coyote that's got extra wide. If you look at the width of the skull, it's especially wide, and that lets it have more musculature to go down to the lower jaw to be able to grab things better, especially larger prey, such as deer. And then if you look at the teeth, the teeth on this eastern coyote have fewer gaps between them as the teeth on this western coyote. So one of my students like to say it's a coyote-like skull with wolf-like teeth, and its teeth are so large in the eastern coyote.
Larger than the original coyote, with longer legs and bigger paws built for speed. This new hybrid has a larger jaw and shorter snout. Its ears are smaller and its tail is more wolf-like than coyote. The coyote is an impressive creature that continues to evolve, constantly learning and improving as it navigates new landscapes and takes on new challenges.
So if you guys want to learn more about that, I highly recommend the documentary Meet the Coy Wolf. It goes way more into detail than that. Here's some more awesome camera trap photos that Tulsi sent me, I think from my personal favorite log set. If you noticed during the red fox slide, I had put pictures of the red fox on that log, and the red fox was scent marking that log. So we had the opportunity to watch the coyote react to the scent of a smaller canid within its territory. And I'm pretty sure it rolled all up in that log. So again, like most canids, mostly nocturnal, mostly crepuscular. Though it's not uncommon to see them in the daytime, it doesn't necessarily mean rabid. Again, opportunistic, eat what you can when you can. When hunting smaller prey, coyotes do tend to be more solitary hunters, but they will form a hunting pack when they're going after a larger prey like white-tailed deer. Deer really are more vulnerable during fawning season. And then coyotes do actually act as our current apex predator in that they will call the unhealthy and the old from herds. We often get people at the center talking about, I heard a pack of 30 coyotes howling behind my house last night. And that's not really how coyote packs work. Again, it's only really 2 to 7 members within a nuclear family. But we have something that we like to call the 5-to-1 strategy at Wolf Mountain. Essentially, when you hear coyotes howling, take the number that you think that is and divide it by 5, and that's how many coyotes are actually there. It's really their strategy to create the illusion of a large pack of coyotes that can't be rivaled. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the future of canids in New York State. And we also get a lot of people who ask us if we think that wolves would ever make a comeback into New York State. And I gotta say, I don't personally have high hopes for that, for several reasons. We have had 3 natural dispersing wolves come through the state, or documented in the state in the last 20 years, and all 3 of them were killed because they were mistaken for coyotes. Our eastern wolves look very much like coyotes, they're just larger versions. So it's common for them to be mistaken for that. So what we really need, if we want those Great Lakes wolves to be dispersing down through New York State, is we need stricter hunting regulations on coyotes. And we did get one win recently. As of November 2024, this upcoming fall, wildlife killing contests are going to officially be banned in New York State, which is good because the most recent wolf that was killed 2020-ish that was killed during a coyote killing contest. So that's good. And what we need for the future of protecting wolves, well, we still have the issue of wolves not being universally protected in all of the lower 48 states. They are not currently protected in the northern Rocky Mountains or the western US. And in the western US, it's really up to state politics, which could be, you know, run mostly by the largest industry out there, the cattle ranchers. But US Fish and Wildlife Service announced that they will put forth an effort to develop the first ever nationwide gray wolf recovery plan. And they plan to be working on this and having it completed by December 12th of 2025. So fingers crossed, write your representatives, that sort of thing. But really, I think what is so important about what we do at Wolf Mountain and what Chelsea and Allie do here at Mueller Field Station is that we provide outdoor environmental education. And it really takes education to increase our cultural carrying capacity. This is a term that Chelsea and Allie have heard me say ad nauseum. It's something that we learn in the FLCC Conservation Department in Con 100, Intro to Con. Ecological carrying capacity, that's a different thing. That's how many animals can exist in a given area. Cultural carrying capacity is how many animals humans are comfortable with allowing in their area. And so I would say that the general attitude of visitors to Wolf Mountain about wolves is romanticized. Wolves are majestic. The wolves are my favorite animals. But these same people, when you ask them how they feel about coyotes, what is a very common response you get, Karley?
I hate them.
I hate coyotes. They're vermin. I kill coyotes every year. And so we have a very low cultural carrying capacity for coyotes already. If you add wolves into that mix, I'm not optimistic about that. But that's why what we do is so important, because with education comes understanding. And I want to leave you guys with one last thought today. This is a story that was told to me by Will, our founder at Wolf Mountain. And I actually looked it up and got some more details on it. But it's the Ojibwe story of the original man and wolf. This is a creation story not unlike a Christian creation story. Look for some of the similarities. So in the beginning, Creator set Anishinaabe, which is first man, down onto earth to travel to all the places to name all the plants and animals. Anishinaabe noticed that all the animals came in twos, and yet he was alone. So Creator sent Wolf down to be his companion. As he traveled, Wolf kept man company. They became close as brothers. And as Wolf helped name all the plants and animals, they realized that they were brothers to all those who depended on them as well. When they finally finished their task of visiting all the places, Creator told Anishinaabe and the wolf that they must go their separate ways. But whatever happens to one would also happen to the other. Now that man and wolf have their separate worlds, you can surely see that what has happened to one has happened to the other. Both have lost very much. Both have been misunderstood or mistreated. But on the other hand, both have survived. Both have made it for life and raised families. And hopefully, the future will bring a new understanding of a relationship between man and wolf, and that they will continue to look out for each other, even though they no longer live as brothers. Thank you, guys.
So how long do foxes keep their pits in their dens before they venture out for like the first?
That depends on the subspecies, but with the Arctics and the grays, that 10 to 12 days is about accurate for
Oh, so
them
they're
as well.
right out once.
Oh, sorry.
No, I said in mine.
So in the wild,
Yeah,
so, sorry, typically, we will transition the wolves to living into a faux den, but that also allows light and sound of nature and all of that. And then start with their little kind of puppy play dates, around a few weeks to a couple months of age. So after their eyes and ears have opened, when they start developing those muscles and really start going into play mode versus just eating and sleeping all the time. And their development is very much like our domestic dogs. It just happens at a faster pace.
I'll also add that I spy on my resident foxes at my house through camera traps. And generally, I start to see mating behaviors around Valentine's Day, the season of Amore. And then usually by March, April, the kids would be born in the den. Sometimes I see parents moving them from one den to another. Usually foxes will have several den across their territory. And I would say generally by June, I'm watching footage of fox kids out hunting and pouncing on each other and doing things like that. And their goal is to send them off in the fall so that they can have another round of kits the following season. So they grow extremely fast.
Have you ever had any accidents or any wolf turn on anyone? It's a wolf mountain.
I don't think we have. The only people who go into the wolves are the people who are well trained for that, and they generally can recognize before they enter the enclosure if it's appropriate time to go in or not. They've become really good at reading the animals, and the animals are not afraid to tell them, not today.
Yeah. Typically, the biggest injuries are coming from the puppies and the kits, just because they are like our domestic dogs. They have the sharpest little needles for claws and teeth, and they just don't really know what they're doing. But that is why when we work with them so closely and kind of show them as young that we are much more fragile than they are, so they can't treat us and play with us the way that they would their wolf companions. So they are able to get that energy out in their enclosures on their own, but they know that we are to be handled with kid gloves, basically.
Any other questions?
It's another one then. The wolves are carnivorous, so their usual feed, do they do any of their own hunting?
They do, actually.
They have access to animals?
So anything that gets into the enclosures on its own is fair game. So they obviously are not hunting deer. That's gonna be a little bit hard for them to jump our 10-foot fences and all of that. But they do get roadkill deer. We are getting into the end of our deer season just because the temperatures are not consistently below freezing, all of that. But anything that is wild and goes into the enclosure, they are able to go after at their want or not. We do have a wide variety of species that we have taken out of enclosures. Rabbit is probably the most common, squirrels, various species of bird.
The unfortunate porcupine incident.
Yes, porcupine are not welcome at the center. They are the only species probably that we would say that. They do a number on the wolves for sure. Luckily, it does not happen too often, but I'd say in the past 3 to 4 years, we've had definitely 2 porcupine incidents, which is way more than we would like. But beyond that, we also have taken out wild turkey. They have gotten birds as big as that in the enclosures. We did remove a red fox from one enclosure, which they just killed. They didn't try to eat or anything like that. A fisher, raccoon. So we are removing their carcasses fairly frequently. Usually it's the smaller animals though. Snakes are a pretty big one, especially as we get into spring. Frogs for the animals that have ponds in their enclosure. The one picture that we had was Diani, Sequoia, and Keaton. Diani, her favorite thing to do is hunt frogs. So she stays at those ponds as much as she can when they are full and just goes for it.
So you just kill them, they don't eat them?
Depending on what it is. And also our animals are very spoiled compared to their wild counterparts. They are fed every 2 to 3 days. It is food that is dead, that is ready to eat. They just have to open up their mouth basically and swallow it. For things like the deer, they do have to work a little harder for that, which we prefer, especially with it being closer to their natural diet. But they are just so well fed that it's really more of an activity for them, or something that's interesting. In Diani's case, she likes frogs, so she'll usually, she likes to roll on them. So that's more of a sport for her, but the rest, it's just something different.
So besides breeding, where do you get the animals from?
All of our animals do come from other captive facilities, usually ones that are educational facilities like ours. We have had a couple of rare cases where, like the DEC, our first 2 coyotes, they did ask us to take in. So we were able to, we had the space to accommodate that. But most of our animals at the center are altered, either spayed or neutered. So we are not a breeding facility. We do breed. We have had 3 wolf litters in the 18 years that we've been there. And that's only if either we need new age groups and bloodlines to keep our pack structures pretty stable, or like Wolf Park, we have swapped with them for 2 of Diani and Sequoia's pups went out there, and that's how we got Cypress and Tariel. So our timber wolves swapped for Alaskan tundra wolves.
We are hoping that our Arctic fox makes
Mate,
this
You guys met like 10, 12 years ago. She used to live out that way. We were there. Like, that's why when we heard you guys were coming here, we're like, yeah, we're.
Nice.
I think fox, right, they don't really breed in captivity.
Not typically, no.
And you guys had that in like 13 or 14, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We have had 1 successful litter, that Yukon and Yana, that mated pair, they have both passed. But Aurora and Avalanche are 2 younger ones. They are from separate litters and are a mated pair. We are just hoping for reproduction from them at this
I did
point.
see some behaviors on Saturday, so.
How much do they weigh, the Arctic?
They're small,
Yeah, like
maybe 7.
maybe 7 to 8 pounds at their full winter weight, but they're very small. Even their winter coat makes them look so much larger than they are.
So, about 10 years ago, I was up on some land in Canids spring water. I went out into the woods. And I saw this animal and I couldn't tell if it was, I think it was a coyote, but it was black. And it was not a dog, but when it was walking with its head kind of level and its tail was straight out. And it was black, and it was walking in a fast pace, straight line through the woods. And I don't think it was 30 pounds, but I don't think it wasn't 140 either.
Yeah.
It was probably about the size of a German Shepherd. Or maybe
A German Shepherd would be pretty big even for our eastern coyotes. And I'm not super familiar with whether or not like melanism, black coat is common in coyotes, but it would be interesting if it were.
So are the coy dogs really the dogs breeding with coyotes?
So eastern coyotes, aka coy wolves, they do have a varying amount of gray wolf, western coyote, red wolf, and domestic dog. So at some point in the turn of the century, it was really a love the one you're with kind of situation. But I mean, because they're still genetically neighboring species, like it wouldn't be uncommon for them to continue to hybridize over time. So if we get those naturally dispersing wolves coming down and there's no potential mates around, that coyote is going to start to look pretty good.
Or your dog?
Or your dog.
Have you heard any stories of people with like almost pet red fox? Like I've had
Yes.
some family members that have had them come up on their deck and lay down and sleep and eat the cat's food and on the deck. Yeah.
So it's not legal to have a pet fox in New York State. They are actually also on the dangerous animal license because the Vulpes genus, red foxes are considered one of 4 of our top rabies vector species in the state. So because of that potential, because there's no actual rabies vaccine designed specifically for red fox, it's usually a cat vaccine they're given. The liability of them contracting rabies from another animal and giving it to their human family would be an issue. But there are many states where red fox can be kept as pets. Pennsylvania, I think, is one of them.
Really?
I will say it wouldn't be my personal preference to have one as a pet. I have worked with several red foxes as well. They're not domesticated, so they do not have manners. But the biggest issue with them is the smell. They smell skunky. They reek like skunks, basically. So there's no way I want that in my house personally.
Yeah, my cousin's the cat would be out, that's how it came up to the deck.
Getting the cat food.
Because the cat food and piped in. But the cat and the fox, they were not friends, but I mean, you would think the fox would go after the cat.
Well, a lot of people get nervous about fox going after cats, but you can see the size difference. It's not that much.
Yeah.
Red fox aren't that big in comparison. You ever seen a Pomeranian get in a fight with a cat? Who's going to win that? The cat.
Yeah.
So foxes are smart enough not to pick a fight they can't finish, I think. So it's really would be uncommon for a red fox to try to predate a cat, a full-grown cat at least. So anytime I see somebody in hysterics about their cats being in danger of foxes, you just try to talk them down a little.
I have a question about the eyes. I remember learning in class about gray wolves having yellow eyes. Is that all wolves? Wolves have yellow eyes?
Most wild canids are going to have eye color that ranges from like a yellow amber to a brown. But you often have people talking to you about their wolf hybrids that they have at home with the bright blue eyes that are essentially they're huskies. You wouldn't really legally be allowed to keep a wolf dog hybrid in your house anyways. And I don't think wolves would make great pets because when you really think about the differences between dogs and wolves, wolves are essentially act like dogs until they're 2 years old and sexual maturity kicks in, and there's a whole different level of cognition there. They're an intelligent animal. We have bred dogs, domestic dogs, to basically stay puppies forever. Everything that we see in them is a wolf puppy trait. In fact, a weird fact, female wolves don't squat to go to the bathroom. That is a puppy trait that we still see in dogs. So they're just not good pets. They don't have the same way of thinking that a dog would have.
I know you don't know what they're thinking, but what's the change that you see that indicates they're thinking differently?
I think the same change you might see when your own kids turn 18, 19, 20 years old and they don't want to stay at home anymore and listen to you. They want to go off into the world and do their own thing. Dogs and wolves would be the same. They don't need you to be their family anymore after 2 years old. They can go off and do their own thing. But a dog, a domestic dog, they've been bred to be a puppy forever. They need you. So that's really the difference.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming today, and we really hope that you will come visit us at Wolf Mountain this year. It is a hike, but especially if you come out for the camping with wolves, like it's just probably one of the best nights of my life was staying in that teepee and listening to the wolves howl every night, and then opening the flap in the morning and coming out and having them just blast me with a morning serenade. So it is certainly worth it. We do have that, I think it's wolf and coyote puppy party this Sunday.
Yes.
We just all ran out. Oh gosh,
I know.
it's in here somewhere. Just pull that up. Okay, yes, so wolves and coyotes are gonna get their birthday presents this Sunday, starting at noon.
No, usually between 12:30 and 1, we start the special events.
I think the weather's supposed to be nice too, so it would be a lovely day for driving
Planning
out there.
for very nice weather this weekend.
Thank you very much, folks. We appreciate it. How do I stop the thing? We unfortunately did not bring any with us today, but you can check out our website. If you just Google us. We also have like all of our stuff.
I'd love to visit.
Yes, please do. We'd love to see you there. It's not.
It's slow.
So that's sort of here.
Somebody know. I've enjoyed it very, very.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Oh, it's like, nice.
You know, it's not too far, you think it's something already.
They were big.
It's good to see you all, see you.
There we go.
I'm working on getting here.
I did go over. I felt the mixture.
How much over?
I did go significantly over my time.
Oh, boy. Yeah.